Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Out of the Box with Christine. I am your host, Christine Blasdale, and I am very happy that you tuned in today because we have a very special program. If you are someone who has your own business, if you're thinking about having your own business, if you are hating your job and you're thinking about changing careers, whatever it is that you do, you're going to want to listen to this show. My guest today is top branding influencer, Grace Lanni, and she has a bunch of incredible programs for her clients on how to improve their personal branding, working on their marketing, and we're going to be talking about all of that today. She's been inspiring clients for years to discover their personal brand for business success, and she has developed her own personal branding program called All About That Brand. You can find out more by going to allabouthatbrand.com. We're going to talk. There's so many things that she's done, but we're going to jump into it because she's with me right now, waiting patiently. Welcome to Out of the Box, Grace. How are you doing?
Hello, Christine. Thanks so much for having me here today.
It is my pleasure because branding is something that I have wrestled with. I for the longest time, I didn't want to be on video. I didn't want to have my picture out. You know why? Because I'm a radio veteran, and I liked, people not knowing what I looked like. Um, and
Yeah. I
but
get it completely. I mean, we've had an audio podcast since 2017. And, after telling my clients, you know what, video is where it's at, you have to move to video. Well, guess what? I'm in that line. So we're queuing up our first 3 video podcasts, and we're going forward just like you are now. So you're ahead of the game.
yeah, and reluctantly, it took me a little while, but it's so very important. Not only is video important for the work that, of course, that I do with podcasting and speaking and all of that good stuff and coaching, because people got to see you, they got to like you. But also, what I've learned is that people really do want to connect with you. They actually want to know a little bit more about you, and so that's why I've made that jump, and I'm really happy to. But today's program, we're going to talk about how people can improve their brand if they've never thought about themselves as a brand. This might be a new concept for them. But before we jump into all that, why don't you let our listeners know a little bit about your journey? Because I love the story behind the story. I love the story behind the brand. How did you get to do what you're doing, being a top branding influencer? How did you get here?
Purely by accident. I was trained in engineering. I'm a biomedical electrical engineer.
Get out of here.
Isn't that kind of crazy? And at the time that I graduated, they didn't hire girls until you had a PhD. And the thought of going back to school for another 4 to 6 years was like, forget about it. I had my head down getting 2 degrees in one shot, and I had enough, and I got involved in the technology industry. I actually ran the tech support and the training program for a local Apple store, back when it was an Apple store.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't such a thing really as a Mac. It was just kind of coming out, and we were taking care of marketing folks. I did a gig with a large organization that sold devices to the military, and it was my job to sit with the engineers and translate what the thing was supposed to do for the marketing people so that they could do the user's manual for the guys who are on the front line on the ground, underneath whatever it is they were doing.
Yeah.
It was called the Encryption Interface Kit. That was my very first project, was to help these ladies talk about why folks needed encryption, if you can imagine. Oh my gosh, that's a little bit of a flashback. I don't know that I've
That
talked
sounds
about
so
that
military-ish.
It was, yeah, because when they were communicating, they didn't want people that weren't supposed to be listening to listening. And so that's what this device was supposed to do. And, ended up going into another tech company and then got recruited to California because that's where it was at, right?
Yeah.
California was where everything was happening in 98. So
Oh
if I
yeah.
wanted to be a CEO, I had to go to California, right? Because upstate New York was more cows than people. And they're just, it wasn't like New York City. Upstate New York, it's very, very sleepy little town. And I was ready for a move. I was actually widowed. I had a 5 and a 3-year-old, and we were ready for a big change. And so we moved to Sacramento, and the firm I was with, I grew them from 4 people to 35 and said, okay, it's time to get these products online. And they said, you know what? We don't think this internet thing's going to take off. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to start looking again. And I was referred actually by one of my partners, knew about a gig for a VP of professional services and sales for a shopping cart startup in Austin, Texas in 99. This is like a Big Step knockoff. You remember the name Big Step? That was code. That was a code name for one of the first e-commerce engines out. And I'd wanted to get from hardware into software. And so I landed in Austin, and 2 months after I got here, I went to work and the doors were chained.
Oh,
so it was a big like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? You know,
that's not a good sign when the doors are chained
no,
together.
You know, this company, they did a reverse merger into a public shell. They got less than $1 million for 35 employees, and they ran out of that money very, very quickly, as you can imagine. And I started calling people I knew, and I said, hey, what projects do you want to get done that you need help with, don't have the talent, or don't have the time to do? Because I need something to do, and here's why. And the story was so compelling. These people knew me, they trusted me. 6 months later, I had a consulting company. So fast forward 15 years, and I'm still doing kind of the boutique consulting thing. You know, we launched a startup, a software startup. Austin Ventures put a couple $1 million in. You know, there are a lot of really good parts of that ride. And I said, okay, you know, if I'm the only person that's out there being the point person for these clients, it's tough to scale this way. So what's my online program? And my team came back and they said, well, you're a personal branding expert. I said, what are you talking about? What the heck is that? You know? And I was hooked. I was hooked by Tom Peters, the Fast Company article, Brand Called You. I was hooked by it and started to do this onboarding process with clients initially. And really what it was, it's the branding canvas. It's the first part of the engagement that we have with any client. And we were able to transition that program into an online course. You know, we added the podcast. We're doing regular content on lots of different channels. And, you know, we're working with 2 kinds of folks. We're working with corporate refugees who are trying to launch their first consulting company, or someone who owns a consulting company, but they haven't quite leaned into promoting themselves. They're so focused on their client, they really haven't elevated themselves. Or folks who own their own businesses, but they and their leaders haven't really gotten plugged into marketing their position, not only from a company aspect, but individually. So if I'm the HR guy for this huge $100 million business, I probably ought to have a stance on what's important in HR. Otherwise, millennials coming into my organization, which are the biggest part of the workforce now, they're not interested. They're walking away.
Right.
And so I started at a time where personal branding was like a big question mark over people's heads, and it's catching on. You know, more and more people are all about what's my story. One of my, you know, the word authentic. Yes, you want to be authentic, but if I hear the word one more time, I'm going to scream. And you know what I end up telling people is like, what's in your heart? What do you care about? You know, because that's
what are you passionate
authentic.
about? Right. What are you passionate about?
Yeah, what lights you up, you know? And if you're not sure what that is, let's go figure that out. the other word is story. And, think I think I'm about fussy enough about that word, because when you tell someone, hey, just what's your story, it's not an easy thing to lean into. It's not an easy thing to share, unless you're trained on how to do that. It's challenging. And I love to help people get comfortable with sharing their value and sharing the transformation value. So, it used to be people were all about, like you said earlier today, right? Getting hooked on the story. But really it's the story about the transformation that you can provide your clients. That's where the magic is. Don't you
So,
think?
yeah. So taking it from being a thing about you and changing it to what you can do for others. And the story,
Yeah,
the quote unquote story is in there somewhere,
it is. It is.
but it's
And
not,
if you're
doesn't have
going
to
to
be a story.
communicate it, it's a story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
you're a genius on the realm of story.
Oh, thank you.
Well, because you're listening, and you're listening automatically for that transformation, and not everyone does.
Well, that's partially because from many years, right, doing interviews. I started off many, many years ago as a writer doing I started off just doing reviews, like film reviews and music reviews. Then the opportunity came to do actual interviews. Then the next step was working with America Online. And with America Online, remember those days, it was the golden era of
Right?
the internet, because that's when all that money came in for websites. I remember
Wild, wild west.
Wild Wild West, baby. If you had an idea for a website, and it could just be a website about a door opening, you got $1 million. I mean, there was so much capital coming into startups. And with America Online, it was a great opportunity because I got to speak to a lot of people without speaking to them, number one. Number two, I had the opportunity then to meet a lot of people that the rest of the nation, they just wanted to know a little bit about, because it was Hollywood, right? It was entertainment. And so I was able to do that now, but I did that through a cartoon character. I didn't even do that as Christine Blosdale. Sometimes I regret that, because from a branding perspective, I'm like, they would, Christine Blosdale, that name would have been, but it didn't work that way. It worked better through a Martini Totlin, sexy, vampy, Hedda Hopper-ish cartoon character named Beatbox Betty,
Yeah.
because she wasn't real. She wasn't real. What she said and what she thought was real, and they knew that it was a writer behind it, but they never knew me. They just knew this cartoon character.
Right.
So from a branding perspective on that, I guess it was also easy for people and fun for people to check in. But now what we're talking about, an era where it's another renaissance, right? Now we have so many people starting up their own businesses, starting up their own consultation companies. And there is also this huge influx, and I know you know this, Grace, better than anybody, of women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I have some clients and some wonderful folks that I work with that are in their 70s, that are just now, they have all this passion, they have all this desire, they have the time now, but and they're just now starting on their first venture and their first business, aside, away from a company, right? Away from the boss type thing. Let's talk about that, this renaissance too of people in general, but especially women coming out to the world with their gifts, their passion, their talents, and obviously the need for branding in that as well.
Yeah. So, what the big change is that a side hustle. It used to be called moonlighting, and it was a naughty thing. You
Yes.
weren't supposed to work outside of class, so to speak. If you were a good, you know, X generation person, you worked your tail off 24/7. You took your work home with you. You were working on the weekends. The Generation X single mom had a kid on one hip and, a telephone or something that they were doing in the other hand. I mean, it was an intense time to be a woman entrepreneur, just to be women in business, right? And so we've come so far in that not only is there a name for a side hustle, but companies, like IBM, gives folks the chance internally to move into another organization to test out an idea for a side hustle that they have. Now that's pretty powerful,
That's
right?
smart. That's
It's like,
smart.
and people are running around saying, okay, 7 streams of income. So if you got your day job is number 1, so that's 6 MLMs. It's a side hustle doing some consulting. It's investing in I just got a notice today, one of the companies that I was involved in and did a little convertible debt deal with, was just bought for 20 million bucks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a bonus prize coming. So, it's accepted and it's encouraged and it's celebrated to not hang your hat in one closet, so to speak.
Well, also the days are gone where you could work for a company or an organization for 20 years, 30 years, whatever, and then you retire and you get, a great deal when you're done. Now, if you get a watch, if if they give you flowers on your
They
last
throw you
day.
a happy hour. It's been good, right?
Yeah, if they give you a cake in the green room.
Totally. And,
Yeah.
women have had this renaissance alongside the renaissance of the side hustle. I mean, there's even a movie with J-Lo all about the second act, right? Of course, now it's like, I don't know, what am I in the 20th act? I have no idea. So, just reinventing yourself and trying new things. Failing at something is not devastating the way that it used to be. It's like, okay, if you're not failing, you're not being bold enough.
You're not trying, right? You're not going outside of the box, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
that's what I always say too. I try to say that to my friends and also to clients that I work with on coaching, is that everybody is a beginner at some point, and you're going to make mistakes. I work with people on radio and podcast skills, and one of the biggest things that people have to get over is the sound of their own voice. Sometimes they hate it, and I'm like, but you try to do a podcast, so you're going to have to, at the very least, be able to listen to your own voice. And I'll have them do exercises. I'll say sing in the shower, and record it. I'll say also when you're in the car and you put some music on and sing, because it's not about falling in love with your voice. It's about being comfortable enough, and so that when your show is done, you're gonna promote the show because of your guest. You have a great guest, and you think that people need to hear from them. But also, there is that added little thing about your brand promoting you as well, because people are listening not just to your guest, they're listening to you, and you're really their tour guide. And so
Yeah.
you have to believe in yourself. That's extremely, extremely important for people to like themselves as well, like how
Yeah.
they sound, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you have the device with you 24/7. So turn on the recorder and just talk about something. Talk about something that you experienced at a lunch, or something you experienced with your. Just start every day talking about it, and then go back and listen and tune into to the ums, to the ahs, to the this, to the that. But I hadn't thought about this before, Christine. You really brought this up, but a lot of people don't really, they've got self-love stuff going on. So
Boom.
hearing their voice, hearing their voice might, you know, might open up the opportunity to resolve that, or at least put it in a different place, right?
Well, and it's a combination of not only listening to their voice, but looking at themselves in the mirror and speaking out loud. And I know, and I don't want to get too unicorn, metaphysical, but you really do have to at least like who you are in
Yeah.
order to, if you're going to sell yourself, right? If you're going to go after that job promotion, if you're going to write that book and hopefully get people to open up the book or to interview you, that is something that is extremely important, is that you have at least the ability to look at yourself, to hear yourself, and show some self-love. And I always equate it to, it's easy for us to love our children, right? Like unconditionally. We love our children. They can't do any wrong, even if they throw a tantrum in the supermarket, you still love them. We love our pets, even if they do a poop on the carpet. We might be mad a little bit for a quick second, but we love them. If we just turn 10% of that love that we have for our children, for our dogs, for celebrities, on ourselves, wow. There's
Yeah.
so much that we can do. There really is.
Well, self-love is an interesting conversation. And, I am the absolute worst person to do my own personal and professional brand. There's some sort of human challenge. A brand is all about how I see Christine. So I'm able to communicate your personal and professional brand according to me, right? And if you get enough people together, right, called your network, right? Your network is the one that's actually going to reflect back to you what it is that your brands are. And I'm one of those interesting people in the branding industry. I really believe whether you're an entrepreneur and own your own business, you really have a personal and a professional brand, and you might even have a company brand. But all those things are questions. I have a brand new client that's moving so fast right now because he has one investor that's ready to write a check, but he hasn't put his investor presentation or his package together or anything, right? So he's asked me to help him do that, and he's in the CBD industry. And you know what? It wasn't something that people talked about. I mean, you type his name in, you'll never find it. And so one of the big hefty conversations we're having is, okay, are you going to be the front man to this thing, or are you going to bring somebody else in? And by the way, if you got a front dude, okay, who's the front woman? Right? What is the story that you're going to be presenting, and to which audience? Not necessarily niching, if you will, but okay, where's the tip of the spear? Who are you going to serve first? And,
right.
Him doing that himself wasn't very productive.
Right. Well, if people are able to, that's what I like about the idea of actually bringing on someone like yourself, because we have our own image of ourselves. And like you said, you might be able to, looking at the work that I do, and you can, I can tell you, this is what I do. That's what, a lot of times when people go, they go, so what do you do? The biggest mistake, and I've tried this, it's been a challenge for myself, is, people say, well, like, what do I not do? I do this, I do that, I do this. And we have all of these great talents, right? But as you know, first of all, you can't overstimulate people and give them too much. It's like a Jerry's, it's like a deli restaurant menu. It's too much, and then people just blank out. So you have to really fine tune that. And a lot of times we can't do that ourselves. It takes someone who can say, you know what, as was it Susie Pruden says, the low hanging fruit.
Right.
What's the low hanging fruit? What is it about you that stands out?
For that person,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For that tribe. What is it? What's the value that you can bring to them? The transformation value, right? So today you're challenged with this, but tomorrow you've got more freedom.
Right. Right. What because we're talking about branding and everything, I would love if you would give our wonderful listeners and viewers maybe a couple of the top mistakes people do in branding when they're starting out their business, if they're entrepreneurs, and then maybe a couple of some tips that you might give them on things that they really need to focus in on. And of course, they can go and check your website out and get your wonderful assistance at allaboutthatbrand.com. But before that, what are some of the top mistakes people do when it comes to personal branding or business branding?
Yeah. So I would say the number one item is that they think people should get them. They think their responsibility for understanding what they have to say belongs with the listener. So if you can really get that it's your job to speak in such a way that that person sees value in you, that right there makes the rest of this go easy. So the second piece is, oh my gosh, do I brand my name? Do I have do I call my business something else? What do I do? And some people get hung there and they just don't move forward.
Right.
It's a lot easier to navigate when the ship is actually out on the water. If it's still in the dock, it's tough to do much. The third thing is I've got a lot of clients who build the entire ship. I guess we're in nautical land right now. They build the entire ship and then they're like, okay, let's see if I can get somebody who'll come along on this trip. Versus sitting down with the people that you think are going to be interested in your service and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? What would you rather have? A la market research, right? Go out and talk to people. If
That's a bold concept.
Yeah, if you're in your office more than 50% of the time, I would encourage you to change that, to be out, not only in your local networking thing, but get on a plane or drive to the neighboring city and go to an event of some sort. The people, hey, Christine, you and I met at an event. It was in California. I'm in Texas, right? I was there for some other things, and all of a sudden I had an opportunity to come to this event, and it's opened up lots of different doors. And this is just one of them, because I was open, because I was able to communicate what I was up to, and quite frankly, because I was able to invite you to hop on my podcast. So I had an easy way for people to opt in. Yes. Either via the podcast or, the LinkedIn 7-day challenge, right? The bit.ly/blue cover, capital B, capital C. That will, in 7 days, help you resolve the challenges that most people have about having a profile that people are going to feel like, okay, maybe I need to actually read this. Maybe I need to connect with them. Maybe I need, what's the action? If you can get people to take action, it's likely because and have done the work to understand what they need, right?
Yeah, and now you had mentioned that, and we don't want to breeze over that for our wonderful viewers and listeners. Grace has an awesome offer for folks. It's the LinkedIn 7-day challenge. And we're going to have a link. We'll have a link to that with this show in the show notes. So you can click right on that. But this is very cool. And for people who don't now, okay, Grace, for people who don't know what LinkedIn is, because we're talking as if everybody knows, but they might be thinking it's just a link that you click on in an email. Can you first of all, let our wonderful listeners and viewers know what LinkedIn is, and then a little bit about this 7-day challenge, because I'm going to be taking the 7-day challenge because
Exciting.
the blue cover, the blue cover of LinkedIn has been a nemesis of so many people. And I went to check my profile today, and lo and behold, I have a blue cover. So tell our wonderful listeners exactly what LinkedIn is and what this challenge is all about. Yeah.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is a social media challenge, and you can get to it from your computer. You can get to it from your phone. And it's a sleeper. It has been a social media platform that's been around a long time, growing and growing, and is, quite frankly, personal branding. And the necessity to tell your story has just exploded. So has LinkedIn. So there's some other channels, social media channels that shall remain nameless, that kind of are declining.
Oh, I know.
LinkedIn is on the move, and it's really focused on supporting people in business. If I were to say, what's the difference between it and Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest or this, that, or the other thing, it's really all about business. So you being there with a picture of your dog, or, on a beach in a bikini, probably not for LinkedIn. Yeah. Unless you're a swimsuit model for, a magazine, probably not. Yeah. And I would say that the information that's being shared with the people that you actually log in, you get to tune it so that it's relevant to you. If you get pushed an ad, or if someone in your network sends something that you don't want, you just unfollow. Don't want it.
Yeah.
Off the mark. Right. So over time, and call it 2 to 4 weeks, over time, what you see is the stuff you're really interested in. I love that about LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like it's like the podcast, because it used to be terrestrial radio. You had to find a station, and whatever they were feeding you is what you got. But then the invention of podcasts happened, and now we can seek out the content that we want and have it delivered to us. And LinkedIn is a lot of that, where you can focus in on, I just want to know about this particular content or subject matter. And they're all from the actual people themselves. I mean, CEOs of companies that you respect and love. I always like seeing who searched for me, because I get a little thrill. I'll go, wow, somebody really big in they searched my name. Wow. It's actually kind of a little thrilling. And I'm doing baby steps in LinkedIn. I mean, it's been a reluctant, because I think I've been so overwhelmed with the Facebooks and the Instagram and all of that. But I'll tell you,
it's very different. It's a different social platform than, it's business social versus personal social. So it's a little bit different. And there are plenty of folks, right? Particularly if you come from the finance industry, you're given a binder this thick of rules of what you can't do on social media. So a lot of times people will just say, not for me. Well, I'm one of those people who's read through many, many of those in order to ensure that what we're positioning and what we're talking about doesn't break the rules, but it also allows people to make friends with that person online. And when they're looking for someone to design their retirement plan, they know that that person is it. That woman, that man is going to help me do what I need to do. They've shared something about a transformation, right, that was relevant, or maybe a testimonial.
Right.
So that I think is what is really possible on LinkedIn.
So the 7-day challenge is a great opportunity for people to dip their toes in the LinkedIn world and be guided by you for a full week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a challenge recently with a firm for 30 days. And, I wasn't on the show every day for 30 days, but you know what? Sometimes I got through the whole 30 days worth of content, and maybe on a Saturday I might have had to make up 1 or 2 sessions. And but the learning that I got out of that was so powerful, and the way that it was just a little nugget was powerful. That's what gave me the idea to do this LinkedIn 7-day challenge. And the clients that I work with are running big efforts, whether they're launching a startup, whether they've been running a business for years and years. You know, sometimes they have people that do social media for them. So actually logging in themselves, like perhaps the first 15 minutes with them is helping them figure out what their login is and how to reset that if they can't log in. And then step 2 is like, okay, what is LinkedIn and why do I care? Right? So that's one of the days, is just spending 15 minutes understanding what is personal branding and why do I give a hoot about LinkedIn? And then the next step is really, okay, what do I want to share? What is my personal brand? And I actually share my branding canvas. So here you go. Here's what I do. And in 15 minutes, if you can, you know, put a few words around this process, you're gonna be moving in the right direction. Okay, next day. Who do you care about? Who do you want to get connected with? Because if you're not connected to them on LinkedIn, it's tough for them to see your stuff, right?
Right.
So it's a conversation all around the who. The next day is the what. Like, what are you going to talk about? If you have a business and you are a pet sitter. So you're a pet sitter, you're going to take care of people's pets when they're out. If you're talking about climbing the Himalayas, that may or may not be interesting to your tribe.
Right, or talking about the political process, or right. It's
right. If you only want to house sit, dog sit for people who are also mountain climbers, well, you're on point, right? So figuring out the storylines,
right?
You know, that's an interesting process. And then, okay, next step, how do I look at my LinkedIn profile? And how do I take care of the photo? Like, what are the key elements that I really need to get right? And the blue cover, not having a blue cover, not having a picture of your backyard, right? Having a photo that will really, when people look at it, they're like, oh, that's what she does. And inserting, using, you know, I'm a Canva fiend, using
I love Canva
to drop some words on there that are going to, so that the person looking at it the first time is going to go, oh yeah, that's what they do. Oh yeah, that's what they can do for me. Right? And being able to work through, you know, the advice I give is, you know what, your LinkedIn profile is like the first coffee meeting you're going to have with someone.
It's actually the new digital business card.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of handing it, you know, at a networking thing, that is your business card. And my business card sucks at the moment, Grace.
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to help you with that, Christine.
I'm okay with the picture. It's the red one with the thing. I'm fine with that. That actually gets people's attention. The red background. I don't know anything about branding, but I'm just saying. Some sunglasses at a point and a red background. Boom. But the blue cover, it's the death knell of business.
It is, because people think the first thing it's going to communicate is you're not serious about that platform. You're not serious about yourself. You're not serious about what you're selling. So if you've got a picture of you and your cat in as your profile picture, and you've got a blue cover, you got to wonder who's going to show up for you. You know, are the people that are going to be attracted to that the people that you want to do business with? Or are you, oh my gosh, someone who opted into this LinkedIn challenge, he's a photographer. He has offices in Chicago and LA and, of all places, Wisconsin. And this guy is a rock star. And the first thing I did when I saw him opt in is I went over to LinkedIn and I looked him up. I'm like, oh my gosh. And you know what? He's got a blue cover. He knows that's not supporting the rock star that he is in his industry.
Especially a photographer, right? You've got all
Yeah.
those images.
Right.
Right.
Right. He's got lots of images. He probably has lots of images of everybody else. But the
Ah, right.
trick is to hire someone to take pictures of you doing your genius. Right.
Yes. Yes. That's why, like, I mean, some of the great photographers, Annie Leibovitz, she's an amazing photographer, right? But there's something about her, that the glasses and you want to work with her, because it's not just she takes amazing photographs. It's Annie Leibovitz. It's like, oh my gosh, she's just she's an icon. That's so exciting. Okay, so we got some of the things that we do wrong in branding. We talked about the LinkedIn 7-day challenge, and if folks want to, I highly recommend that everybody participates in that. The link for that, it's a bit.ly link that'll be associated with this podcast show, so you can click on that. But what are some real quick little tips and tricks that you think that you can give our wonderful listeners and viewers about how to improve their branding, or at least how to start that process that they can do, like, now?
So go talk to the people that you respect in business and ask them, when I leave the room, what do you tell people about me?
Ooh.
So
Ooh, I like
that
that.
is your brand. To that person, that is your brand. And if you talk to 10 people and you get crossover between those responses, your brand has some legs and you have some clarity around what that is. If you talk to 10 people and you've got 10 different responses, you need to figure out what you are.
Right.
And kind of be on point with that for a little while.
I like that tip.
Yeah, absolutely. The network owns your brand. And so you're the cruise director of that brand. If you don't like what you're hearing, and I would ask, that's a question I would also ask, what are your what is it that I need to work on to get better? So you're giving the person permission to tell you what you suck at. Like,
Wow,
get better at this thing.
That's a great exercise in life in general, in relationships, hi honey, can you tell me what I can do better? Can you tell me how I can be a better husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, BFF?
Yeah, what would you love for me to do to make a difference in your business?
Yes.
Or, we're in the midst of this consulting engagement. We came up with these goals, but what are the other things that you're really wanting to knock out? How can I help you there? And, getting curious about the people that you're connecting with, realizing that you're reflecting to them, right? Whatever it is they need to learn, and vice versa. They're reflecting to you what it is that you need to learn. And sometimes, I got to tell you, I sat down with a young woman. She worked at a TV station, and she's launching a podcast launch program. I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to this woman. She's in this networking group. I want to help her. I want to help her do her thing. And she said something to me that I got to tell you, I just really didn't like. And she said, you've been doing this a long time. You've got, almost 100 shows, blah, blah, blah. She goes, but you know what? You're not digging deep enough. You're engaging with your clients, but you're not getting to the heart of it. She's like, do you know what I mean? Now, I think that's kind of what I do for a living, like getting to the heart of things with people, helping them express their authentic story brand. It didn't feel good to hear that from her. And what I realized is that I'm so respectful of my guests. I go really deep with my clients because, I'm one-on-one with them, either on a Zoom call or I'm in their office. And I go deep, and very often, there's a lot of emotion around that. Whereas on my podcast, I'm not going for that. So I learned that I could go deeper.
Mm.
I don't actually have to uh, make it uncomfortable for the guest, but actually giving them an opportunity to reflect on something meaningful has a lot of value.
Oh, and from the world of being on the air for many, many years, in both radio and podcasting, I'll tell you, there is nothing better, and as a listener as well, not just as someone who's on air, when you have those moments where there is a dramatic pause, when you are actually swept up in emotion. Sometimes, I mean, I've caught myself on the podcast show with certain guests. I had a guest who is trying to stop female genital mutilation, FGM, that's happening in the United States. There's states within this country that it's still legal, and she is a victim of that herself from her country in Africa. And I'll tell you, many times during that interview, I just cried, and I wasn't thinking about what I look like, what I sound like, what the listeners might think of me. It, who wouldn't be moved and brought to tears when you hear about how many young girls and women experience this horrific thing? And there's your authenticity. Because you're a human being, and we're all human beings, and we have emotions and feelings, and it's that connection. And I think that's the thing that can be missing in a lot of people's, in their business plans and in their startups and things, is that connection to people, and the empathy that we feel, but also that personalization, because it can be just
Yeah.
numbers, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not clear about who you're of service to, right? So, you've got a business that's doing this thing. You might have multiple businesses, but how are you giving back? If you're a young parent and you've got a couple little kids at home, probably most of those cycles are focused on those little kids. And there's absolutely wonderfulness around that. I'm super supportive of that. If you're single with no kids, where are you giving back? Are you coaching others? Are you mentoring others? Are you on a nonprofit? I'm on the board of Backstage Chats, and we give scholarships to girls to get into the music industry. So maybe the percentage of women in the music industry goes from 10% to something, midland.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that helps fuel you and fuels your passion, because I know also you have another wonderful gift, as you're a musician, right? You're also a musician. Are you a
Yeah.
singer too? Do you sing?
Yeah, I sing and play keyboards, and my husband's a guitar player, bass player, singer, and we're at the local vineyard once a month. And it's an excuse for us to get all our friends together, have fabulous wine and food, and just be together.
How lovely is that? And you are in the city too. That is perfect for that, Austin, right?
Live music capital of the world.
I know. Grace, we just have a couple minutes left, and so I just wanted to give you the platform to talk about things that are upcoming for you, things that you are excited about, and anything you want to let our listeners and viewers know about, of course, the work that you do, and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so on that line of service, I love giving back to women entrepreneurs. I involved with an organization here in Austin, but we are hosting the CEO of eWomen Network, 20 years, 500,000 women around the world in her organization. And we're doing a big event here in Austin on February 12th, 2020. And we'd love to have you there. And so, you can hit me on all about that brand. You can register on the ewomannetwork.com website. But being in the room with this woman, there are only 150 seats. We haven't quite sold out yet. And there are 20 showcase kind of pop-up tables, if you will. And we're almost sold out of those. So if you have a cool product for women entrepreneurs and you want to be in the room, if you want to learn something, if you want to be surrounded by these high-powered women, and you know what? And enlightened men. So there are actually a few men in the room too.
Nice. And they can, so they can reach out to you at your website, allaboutthatbrand.com. I encourage people to check her out and also listen to the podcast. There is so much. I've got probably 3 or 4 of the shows that you have in my queue that I need to listen to. And I'm going to be doing it on my drives because I have a long commute sometimes to Los Angeles. And so it's just the perfect amount of time to listen to one of your shows. But I'm so excited to have you on Out of the Box with Christine. And I would love to have you back on. We can get even more in depth in branding. But I wanted to introduce you to our listeners and thank you so much for joining us today. Also, the LinkedIn challenge, the 7-day LinkedIn challenge, which I'm going to take. I want to encourage everyone else to take. If you don't know about LinkedIn, oh my goodness, you're missing out. You can go to the bit.ly link. It's the bit.ly blue cover, but remember it's capital B, capital C, the bit.ly link that's associated with this podcast show. Until next time, I want to
thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Grace, so much. I want to thank you, wonderful listeners, as well. And as I always say, remember to think outside of that damn box, even with branding. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye, everybody.